Hey, hey, welcome to another episode. I am Dagny.
And I'm Damali.
And in this episode, we wanted to reflect and discuss with you the concept of loving yourself, which we sometimes call self-love. But here's the thing. Before you roll your eyes, okay, because I know you're rolling your eyes right now, we actually want to see if we can create a different definition or maybe even a different term for the concept of self-love, because we feel, which you might also resonate with, that up until this point, the rhetoric and the protocols and the instructionals and manuals and orientations for self-love may not have been serving us as much as we would like. So we'll see throughout this episode if we can create a new definition or even start practicing a new way of loving ourselves. So to start, the original, where are we starting to get where we need to go when it comes to this definition of defining self-love? So when I'm talking about self-love, or when we are going to be discussing this in this episode, we're talking about the rhetoric that comes with claiming you can't pour from an empty cup. So your cup should not be empty while you're trying to pour yourself into other people. So your cup should be full, apparently, allegedly, and supposedly. Where I'm also mentioning the rhetoric of, if you don't love yourself, nobody else would possibly be able to even consider finding a reason to love you because you don't love yourself.
Or you can't love anybody else.
Exactly. And then the added caveat to that is that, well, you attract what you are. So if you're not loving yourself, obviously that's why you are attracting all this non-loving energy. And then, was there one more? Oh,
the one. Yourself.
Treating, you need to treat others the way you would treat yourself, or treat yourself the way you want others to be treating you. And do you hear a common thread among these definitions and quotes? For me, the common thread I hear is that all of this so-called encouragement to love yourself has a lot to do with other people. All of it is focused on what you're doing for somebody else, or how somebody else is going to validate or respond to you, which, if the term is self-love, shouldn't all these definitions really just be about you? So and then these are just the quotes. If we expanded it to all the types of masterclasses, webinars, retreats, YouTube series, podcast series, book self-help series that all claim under this category of self-love, a lot of them also follow the same theme of really focusing on everybody else except yourself. Almost like it's about you performing for others or needing to mold yourself for others' consumption. Yes. And for me, and Damali, let me know if you resonate with this, and you listening, let me know if you resonate with this. I don't buy it. I feel that's a lot of Unfortunately, I feel like that's a lot of BS. I feel that's setting us up to not be authentic with ourselves and possibly constantly beating up on ourselves because we feel like if others are not validating us, that must mean I'm doing something wrong, which again keeps you in this looping cycle of performing for others. Then the added layer, again, we're just talking about the original definition. The added layer to self-love also has a capitalization, hijacking component to it. Yes, we got to get into it. Because have you also noticed that the theme not only is about you being performative to other people, but the theme is also, because you're trying to do self-love, you should just go buy something or buy an experience or just go consume. And then you have this almost like that this is another way to kind of try to cattle herd you into more looping of hyper-consumerism. So let me overindulge in shopping because I'm feeling down. or let me overindulge in shopping because I feel good today. Like there is no, it doesn't matter which part of the is it a pendulum, whether you're up or down. Shopping should be the answer, and that I feel like that also causes us to miss the mark, because again, you are then focused outside of yourself. Because what do all these objects have to do with you at all? Even if the shopping is to go to a retreat in some faraway place or to get a service done for yourself, it's still, I feel it may not fully, this spectrum of definitions and experiences may not really be serving the purpose and the goal, if truly the goal is for you to be loving yourself. So let me throw this back to you now, Damali, while we're getting into this. Before we get into our own journeys on this, what would you like to add in terms of this concept or the original definition when it comes to loving yourself and self-love?
Yeah, I think it definitely has some all the quotes we have and things like that have been kind of I don't want to say, well, I guess it is sort of damaging. Yeah, it's damaging because then we don't know, then we're confused, like what is self-love? Then what exactly is it? Because I know I've struggled with like wondering like how do you know if you're loving yourself or not? You know, it always seems like it's very easy to like love other people in a sense. I mean, of course, some people not so much, but like it's not, you know, and then some love is kind of easy. It's expected. Like if you're in your family, okay, well, yeah, of course I love my siblings, or of course I love my cousin, or of course, you know, it's like, it's kind of like, duh, like you don't have to really question it. And I think that, and funnily enough, there's only certain types of love that is, I guess, capitalized on more, right? There's the one that you were discussing, and then also there's the Valentine's Day love with like, there's a love of like couples and stuff, but then love with like friends or love with family is kind of like, oh, okay, well, we don't want to focus on that. Who cares about that? Like we're talking about it's only, but like as if relationship love is the only important one, you know, kind of thing. Because I guess for the family one, it's like expected, or for the friendship one, it's like you're just friends. So what does it have to do with anything, right? And then the self-love one is always connected to something else. It's not just like you should, like it's never like you should just love yourself because why not? And then full stop, without all this extra stuff that comes behind it. And yeah, one particular one that I've always kind of, I understand now, but that I struggled with before, which I didn't really get, was the one about, oh, if you don't love yourself, you can't love other people or something like that, or not fully. And I'm always like, but wait, I don't know if that, I can, whether I'm having a good day or a bad day, I think it doesn't change how much I love people around me. So I always thought that quote was kind of interesting. So I'm like, how does that work? And so, yeah, so the reason why I kind of thought it was that this podcast would be a cool episode to do is because, oh, that's something we haven't really discussed. And that's something I've struggled with, because I'm like, wait, if I don't love myself or I don't like myself, like, what do I do then? Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, is something wrong? Am I broken, kind of thing? And also it seems we live in a culture that's very like self-deprecating kind of thing. Like making fun of yourself is fine, but talking about the good things you do is not fine. Like you'd be like, oh yeah, I'm not really good at that, or oh, I kind of suck at that, or oh yeah, I know I couldn't do that, and that's fine. But then if you say, no, actually, I like how, like if you say, if someone says I like who I am, people are triggered by that, or like, yeah, I love myself. People are so bothered by that, and I'm like, wait, but people keep on telling us to love ourselves. So what's the problem? you know? And then yeah, and then there's the materialistic side of it, where it's like, oh, I'm gonna treat myself today, and I'm like, just today? Like, oh, I'm gonna do a spa. Just that's it. Like, as if like the only way you can express self-love is by doing something that normally costs money, you know, or go to some mountain. Like, oh, if I go to the mountain, I'll find myself. I'm like, what? What? Like, it makes me think of this. I don't know if you guys know the song by U2. I think it's called like where I've gone to, like, I forgot how it goes. We have to look it up. I'll look it up. But it's the U2 song where I've gone to mountains. I've gone to all these places, but I still haven't found what I'm looking for. So it's like I've gone to all these mountains and beaches and different countries, and I haven't, because obviously it's within us, but we keep on doing stuff that's like, and we already have that issue where there's too much of looking outside of ourselves to find validation. And I think this idea of, oh, I have to go buy something to make myself feel better, or it's always like a hashtag, as if self-love is some kind of hashtag thing. And I'm like, it's not, it's like, or it's some kind of like meme or some kind of like joke or funny thing. And I'm like, I think it should be like a given. You know what I mean? Like we're not, I don't think we do hashtag family love. Like, no, like it's, we don't make it into like a joke. I don't know. I feel like the self-love thing is always like, and then it's like funny to be like, oh my God, I hate myself. Oh my God. Or like, I am so gross. Like we say things like that as if it's like a joke. And I'm like, but it's not funny. Like, where's the laugh? Like, I don't get the laugh, So that's how I'll start with some of these damaging, which on the face, the surface, it sounds fine. Of course, what's wrong with buying yourself a drink? What's wrong with buying yourself flowers and treat? Like, no, but it's just like, it's too much of the, it's very surface, and it doesn't really get to the real point of what self-love is about. So that's what we wanted to discuss about this. And then I don't know, should we bring up the video, or should we bring it up later?
No, let's do that later.
Okay, we'll do that later. Okay.
Because that goes with the new definition that we're trying to workshop on this episode.
We're trying to figure out, break it down.
Yes. So then that is, and I do agree that, yes, again, the theme of always looking outside of yourself. And that was a good point too about this, the self-deprecating or self-damaging publicly is deemed to be more appropriate. And it's true that those who unapologetically will take note that like, no, actually, I'm good with who I am. Like I actually do, like I would be my own best friend actually I could, but even more so, I'm going to tell you that. And it's true that can rub some people, rustle some feathers. That could even flip some tables for some people due to the conditioning of it's more appropriate to have low self-esteem, or people like to bond over low self-esteem. Even though and that's not to dismiss those who have it, because there's a source to that it's not, the low self-esteem doesn't come out of a vacuum, or the self-deprecating, you didn't just woke up 10 days and decided I'm just going to speak negatively to myself. That there's a source of that, if someone else taught you that this is how you should see yourself, or this is what is familiar to you. And I think that's a good segue to then share a little bit about our own journeys, because the loving of yourself is a journey, because there's so much learning, unlearning, and relearning we have to do, because we don't come to this planet with an orientation manual that's like clean, right? We're all coming with all kinds of different conditioning happens to us. Psychologically, apparently, the first 7 years of your life is very formative. It possibly molds a whole lot of who you are if you're on autopilot. If you choose not to be on autopilot, then you have to make a serious effort to take note of what observations and experiences did you have growing up, not only up to age 7, but up to that point can be very profound, that taught you what is familiar and what's not, that taught you what love looks like, that taught you how you should treat yourself and others. And take note of which of that do you resonate with and which of that you do not. And when you're taking note of this, it's not to blame anybody else. It's not to claim like, well, I always talk like that way because, my teacher did that and that's their problem. And it's like, no, it's you have to take, it's like, it's not your fault, which I know we've done in previous episodes, regardless of what circumstances or experiences you've had that molded the way you speak to yourself and the way you take care of yourself. It's not your fault that is the conditioning that you received, or that's the cards you were given when you decided to have this particular experience in this dimension. But it is your responsibility what you decide to do with those cards, what you decide to do with those conditionings. That's your responsibility. Do you keep your spaceship in autopilot, or do you decide to take the wheel on manual and drive it yourself? That nobody else can make that decision for you. That's on you. So I'll start in terms of my journey. I feel like there's the different types of conditioning that I had starting out, where I feel like I started out loving myself, not necessarily questioning who I am or whether I'm validated or anything like that. And then I think we've probably mentioned this a little bit in previous episodes, that once you start going to school, a lot of things change because now there's a lot more exposure to people who don't share the same values that are in the house you live in or with your guardians or whoever is looking out for you. And for me, I feel like that did not necessarily get me to not love myself, but I think it did question, I think, during like adolescence and teen years, there was times of me questioning my value, if I cannot be loved by other people, does that mean there's something wrong with me? That maybe I must be missing something, and then questioning, but I do like myself. I enjoy my own company. Why is it so difficult to meet other people who can resonate with that? And then that goes into, okay, now you start later on then seeking out information on how to balance that. And this is where, like a previous episode, those self-help books come in, of how to make friends, how to connect with other people, how to have community. And a lot of it does have rhetoric talking about, well, how do you see yourself? How do you talk about yourself? What do you love yourself? Which I think for parts of me would always be kind of debating each other, because there would be the reminder of, but I do love myself, but I don't feel loved by these other people outside. So why is there such a disconnect then? And I think I then shifted into the somewhat consumerism to fill that void. Because even though, and I'm noting this because even if you are someone who does love themselves, or was lucky enough that the circumstances you had at the beginning was not browbeating you to not believe in yourself, but was really trying to help you to believe yourself in spite of how ugly the outside might be. There's still a void there if outside you still don't see that being reflected back to you. And so for me, I did go through a time where, okay, well, this weekend I'm going to treat myself and go purchase another journal, or I'm going to treat myself and have this pizza, or I'm going to treat myself and, okay, I'll go see a movie, or, you're filling the void with things or time spent trying to have your time spent outside of routine. And even though in the moment it's like, okay, I did something for myself, and these books or these people claim this is how you love yourself. You should always be treating yourself. And I would do that, and the void would still be feeling like there. The disconnect would still be there. There is still questioning within me happening. And then I still need to reflect on what caused this pivot or change, other than possibly just continuing this self-awareness. Because for me, it's like, okay, well, I would just go further, deeper within for me. And I noted for myself, I had to shift out of feeling like I need to fix me, or I need to tinker something. There must be a glitch within me. Maybe I need another software upgrade. There must be something I need to fix. I feel the dynamic changed a lot when I shifted from that to actually this void should be full of me. So if the disconnect that's not reflecting, as in the love that I think I have for myself, I'm not seeing it reflected back at me. Okay, then what about that means my needs are not being met? Okay, do I even know my own needs? Have I ever had needs before? Maybe people don't know my needs. That's why they haven't given it yet. So this is where, for me, the change happened with my journey of like, let me start defining my needs. Let me start defining what kind of experiences I would like, as opposed to just going along with whoever apparently, or whatever group or whatever experience came my way. And noting that if a recurring thing was occurring, okay, I take note, this is not meeting my needs, so let me give it to myself. I prefer when I'm holding myself accountable, so I'm going to do that. Or I really need honesty, so I'm going to keep to my word that I'm going to show up like this today, or like every day this week, I'm going to make sure I don't know, either do exercise or eat a certain way, or like really take care of myself, but not for the sake of other people, for me. So that for me, I think changed, like was a really big game changer for me, because then my focus no longer was, it was no longer, the focus was no longer of lack. It was no longer paying so much attention to, but this person isn't responding this way, or this job isn't the way I want it. Or it's more of like, I see myself making progress. Like I really like celebrating my wins for me, regardless of how big or small they were, noting the habits I was creating for myself. And then and this took time. It wasn't an overnight thing, but gradually then taking note of like, wow, now I love myself not only because, I was taught I should. Now it's like, no, I love myself, and I see that I'm actually my best lover. Like, I'm so proud of the way I take care of myself. I'm so proud of the way I show up for myself. I'm so proud of the way I hold space for myself. I allow myself to not have all the answers. I allow myself to figure things out. I allow myself to cry. I allow myself to laugh. I allow myself to take a break if I need it. I allow myself to challenge myself when I need it. And it's for, like, there's no longer a void. And then gradually I noted that reflected back in my reality, where those who did not meet that, I could see them, the discernment of those who could not meet that was faster. And when I would note that, which was another big thing, when I would note that others may not respond to me or could not maybe meet certain needs, that's others' experiences, circumstances, jobs. It's not like one particular person. It's like just in general, your reality. The next level to that was noting this thing or person or experience is not bad because they can't meet my need. This is just their capacity. This is just their level at this time. My responsibility is choosing, do I tolerate that or not? And then how do I articulate that to not cause more of a rift or more of a void? And so that caused me to be able to be much more accepting, I think, of myself and of others. Because like for me, when you go through this, it's like, do you understand how much everybody else must be carrying as well? Because there's just like so much we're constantly processing and experiencing and questioning and stumbling upon and experimenting and winning and not winning. And I guess that goes into also of like trying not to take things personally, but also taking responsibility for how I show up for me and around others. And I am very grateful because now, as of recently, for maybe a few years now, I've now finally have seen like my reality starting to reflect back to me that there is no longer a void, which to me is really beautiful, because I do think like reality kind of, there's like a lag. So even though the internal stuff you're doing, you can feel it and it's like great, but outside it still is like, why doesn't this connect? But then when it finally starts adding up, where it's like, wait a minute, all of this beauty is happening and I can just be me, not perform, not overdo it for people, not overindulge, not hide anything, like literally just continue being me while still figuring it out. It's such a sigh of relief, because I feel like the definitions that we were noting at the beginning of this episode really makes it feel like I think it causes tension, because you're constantly trying to fix yourself or constantly focusing on how will others perceive me, or would anybody ever have the capacity to be close to me or to be part of my reality, when you get to release that and just like almost like release control over the perceptions of other people or the performativeness that this rhetoric or some aspects of society want you to conform to, it really is a sigh of relief. Like, it's so freeing. For me, it has been so freeing going through this process. And it's something that there is like, I don't even know if one can say there is a destination, because it's not like I'm done. Like, I still have work to do. And it's like, and the process is like, there'll be things that come up that, oh, wow, I thought I kind of already went through that. But I guess this is another layer of it that I need to deal with. But it gets, I guess the process gets more familiar. I was going to say easier, but I feel like no, not necessarily easier, but maybe more familiar, because you gradually build this habit or this muscle, for me anyway, of taking care of yourself and holding space for yourself. So that's how my journey and processing dynamics when it comes to loving myself have evolved over time.
Yeah. I think, for me, I agree with that, where like when you're younger, like I feel like, I mean, for like, you loved yourself without any question, and then you go outside. It's always when you go outside, it's like, if I'd stayed in, didn't go around other people that don't know me, that I didn't grow up with, because when I was before school, I was fine, right? Before having to go outside, like with family, I was like, oh yeah, I love myself, of course. And I was always very like, I'm a Leo, so of course I'm like, yeah, of course I'm awesome and I'm great at everything and I love myself. What's the problem, kind of thing. And then when I remember being like, when I finally did start school, I remember people being triggered by that when I would say like, oh my God, I'm perfect. And like, I'm this, I love myself and all this stuff. And people would be so bothered by it. And like, I'm like, why am I getting in trouble for saying I like myself? This is weird. And I do think school, unfortunately, can punch it out of you. We all know how school is. It's not always the most fun place to be, because everyone is coming from so many different types of family lives, and of course now you know that, oh well, maybe there's a lack of love that they had in their family, or some other reason why they're like horrible or mean to you or triggered by who you are. And I think also have to bring the neurodivergent thing in, because of course, like we didn't know we were neurodivergent until our adult lives, right? So obviously I've always kind of been different in school. I've always been the different one. So that also makes things, it's easy for you to start questioning if I'm worthy of love in all its capacities, because you start like, everyone acts different, or if someone has friends and you don't, or someone's being mean to you, kind of thing, or other people have things that you don't, or they're better at you at something than you, and you mix that up. It's like the wires get crossed, kind of thing, of other people's energy and everything. And unfortunately, like, we're not, as a society, I mean, maybe we're getting better, but as a society, we're not always taught or taught the best methods to regulate our emotions. I think we talked about this in another episode, where we are always told, oh, feel your emotions, have emotions, but we're not taught what do I do with them? And how do I spread out my emotions from other people's? I think that happens a lot, where people's energy sticks on you and you think it's what you think, but it's not, it's someone else, but we don't know how to differentiate. And I think that definitely happened a lot in school, especially I think elementary school was not as bad, for maybe because I wasn't as aware, I guess. But in elementary school, there were some times where, I got in trouble for doing something, or the way that I do it, or like there's an issue with the way I did something. And so obviously you think, oh, okay, then people don't like that I do it. And so I guess that means they don't love that I do that, kind of thing. And actually, I mean, yes, and of course, it's not like I wasn't loved. Like, of course, my parents loved me, my siblings loved me. It's not that, but it's like when you go outside, it's like, oh, my parents aren't here anymore. I have to deal with other people. And I think middle school, that's when things got more difficult. We're having all these emotions, not really knowing what to do with them, and then being kind of standing out, questioning things, like, and then we start putting the thing where I have to do something to be loved. Like it's like, oh, if I do something well, I'm loved. If I don't, then and I don't know where that comes from, because like, why would that? You can be loved regardless, but you just don't feel good about yourself, and that translates into, oh, maybe. And then high school was horrible. I think high school is when it really got like the self-esteem was like, it was like all over the place, man. Like, and everyone knows how that works. Teenager, high school, it's just a mess, right? And you don't really know how to really deal with your emotions. And then like, and I changed schools when I was in high school, and I was around people that were like, like had certain experiences or had certain schooling that was different from mine. So everyone, when I changed high schools, it was almost like everyone was like smarter than me, or I thought I was so good at something, and then oh, just kidding, you suck at all of this, and all these people are better than you, and and like they're either better than you or prettier than you or smarter than you. There's all these things that like, which of course that's not really, I don't think everyone thinks that, but or thought that about me, but and then when I finally found something I was good at, then I was like, oh, okay, latch on to that kind of thing. And then moving on to college got a bit better because I found more things that I was good at and everything, but there was still this thing of like, I don't understand, And then of course you enter into like when you realize, oh, girls and guys kind of thing. You start having crushes and you start wanting to date and all that stuff. And then that also messes with your mind, especially for girls, where you're like, if a guy doesn't talk to me, does that mean something's wrong with me? If a guy doesn't ask me out, like if other girls are dating and I'm not, and then the whole like, you know, and then of course we know the thing about like people that are experienced versus not experienced. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, like what, it's the whole worth, and the worth thing gets mixed up in your self-love thing. And then, yeah, and then we start having something that should be innate to us, we have to do stuff for. Like now I'm like, oh, how do I do self-love now? I have to do things to self, it's something that's supposed to be like, you should already know how to, it's like self-love should be like breathing, and all of a sudden it's like riding a bicycle. Like you have to learn, how do I self-love like a robot? And I'm like, oh, I should go hang out with friends, or I should go buy flowers for myself, or I have to do like, we buy these self-help books and they give us 20, a list of 20, like, do these things to love yourself. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, why do we need all this stuff? Like, you don't need that for like, I never needed a book for how do you love your family or how do you love your friends. You just do it. But then for some reason, self-love is like, oh, you need these steps. And I'm like, when did this happen? Because when I was younger, I didn't have this problem. And and then there was another parts of my life where if I did feel bad about myself, or I felt dark, or I didn't want to like if or I didn't want to be in this world anymore, like I would also be like, oh, there's something wrong with me now. Like it's like if I and there's this thing of like, if I don't love myself or like myself, then that further is why I don't love myself. Like, it's like I don't even, what am I supposed to do then? And then I think I got to a point where, okay, well, I started blocking it. Like, it doesn't matter if I love myself or not. I'll just do what I have to do. I'll be nice to other people. I'll do, the things I'm supposed to, and then just whatever happens, happens. And then I think I distract myself with other people, because I think I didn't really have like the like best friends until like college maybe. Before that there were people, but not really. And there's a lot of times of being by myself, or like I had friends but they weren't real friends. They were like just there. And then college is when I really actually had friends and stuff like that. Um, and so it shifted now where I'm more focused on like my friends and what my friends are doing, what other people and so I'm not really thinking about the self-love stuff. I'm just doing stuff like, oh, I'm in college now. I'm all these clubs. And then when I got my first job, I'm working, and of course I'm working. So that means that I got it together, but I know deep down inside it, there's something going on there. Right. But I'm just like, oh, I'm working now. Or if you start, friends talking to guys, they're like, oh, okay. So it kind of like distracts you from the self-love thing. And then sometimes I would trick myself into, yeah, I love myself. Of course I like myself. Whatever. Like, it's fine. I do what I need to. But it was very like, it was almost like it was like a hazy thing. Like if I questioned it, like, oh, do I love myself or not? It's like a haze. Like, I don't really know. And I'm like, I don't want to deal with that right now. So I'm just gonna, and then you do kind of like outside stuff. And then I guess I mean, and then, yeah, and then there's a lot of inner work. It was like I was doing inner work, but it was all confused and messed up and didn't make sense. Like it was just like a mess. And then all of a sudden, all this darkness comes out of nowhere, and I'm like, where did all this darkness come from? That's all over me. And then, of course, as life moves on, like certain breakdowns or depression and stuff like that was something or darkness I didn't deal with when I was younger, that all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, I'm like in despair. Okay, we need to deal with this, Because everyone knows after school ends, all of a sudden life is like, what is happening? What is happening here? and the feeling of not really knowing what you're doing and just like a mess, right? And so when that would happen, and then distraction starts coming in. Where before, when I used to watch things like anime and stuff when I was younger, it was a fun thing. I didn't binge watch it, I would just have fun. All of a sudden, when I'm an adult, I'm using outside things to distract myself. So if I feel bad about something, I do like, or eating, for example. When I was younger, I just ate normally. All of a sudden, I'm becoming an adult. Now there's a term, comfort food. So when I feel bad, I eat comfort food, or I feel bad, I watch anime, or I read something, or I do all these things that I'm like into. All these hobbies I have taken is ways to distract myself from having to like be with myself, kind of thing. And yeah, so it kind of, and I think it definitely was a point, I think, like high school, college, where that started out, and then after college, where things were like, whoa, what's going on? And then, and of course, things change. Like once I do something I have a hobby for and I enjoy, and there's awesome people around me, it helps, right? But I still haven't fixed self-love thing, right? And so yeah, so it just got kind of confusing. And then as I've grown up, I've kind of realized more things. I've done more self-reflection about things. I now know I'm neurodivergent, so that kind of helps. I'm like, oh, and I've been able to figure out like, oh, when someone is angry with me, sometimes actually it wasn't about me, kind of thing. Or that thought of like, I freak out about something dumb I did 10 years ago, but I didn't have the knowledge I have now, like things like that, right? And knowing that, even, and then, or sitting with emotions, like if I feel bad, I just sit with it and be like, oh, okay, and then, or looking up more like healthier ways to kind of deal with my emotions or stress, things like that. And knowing that like loving yourself isn't like, it doesn't have to be connected to anything. It just is like, you just kind of like, and so yeah, I still don't know, like, I mean, I guess sometimes I like myself, I guess. I don't really know. I still haven't figured it out. I just kind of, I mean, I try not to be too hard on myself as I did when I was like younger. But if you were asked, oh, do you love yourself? I actually don't know. Actually, like I can't really. It's been such a long time that I've kind of really looked into that, I guess, but I kind of don't know. Like I can't really, like, it's not a yes or a no. I'm like, I'm not really sure, and then I guess I've gotten to a point where I'm like, I do as much work as I can and then just vibe. Like be like, okay, I'll deal with it. And then certain things have gotten better, like the way I've thought about things or past things that have happened. I'm like, oh, okay, I know I was at that spot, and like, you know, and then I'm more cognizant of like everyone is figuring it out, and all these adults that seem to have it together. They're just pretending, and it's just everyone's just trying their best. So for me, when I have up and down, I'm like, well, life is like that. You'll have times when you feel good about yourself, times you don't. You just keep on moving and doing your best and trying your best to find people and things that help you in life and make things better for you. And don't try not to be in toxic situations as much, and trying to like be better. And then do little things, like try to be happy with little things. Even though I know self-love shouldn't be about what you do, right? But if I was lazy about something and then one day I do something good, or I'm disciplined about something, like, oh, okay, there you go, Damali, good job, you did it, you're fine. But yeah, and I still, of course, I still have like distractions and stuff. I still have times where I'm like, oh, I don't really want to poke at that emotion right now. I'm just gonna not. But I guess I'm not fighting how I feel as much. Um, but I no longer like feel bad about not loving myself, quote unquote. There's a time I felt bad about, because I'm like, if I don't love myself or like myself, then what do I do? Because sometimes I feel bad. So what am I supposed to do? Whereas now I'm like, I don't think it's not like it, like loving yourself and loving other people is very different. And I kind of like, and it makes sense like why. So I'm kind of like, it's okay if you don't love yourself, it's fine. You'll figure it out. Or maybe it's like I do love myself, but I don't know what I don't know. It's hard to explain, because like I can tell when I love other people. It's very easy for me to tell, but for myself, it feels different. So I don't really know how to answer that. So, and then of course, that added thing we talked about, where it's like, oh, if you don't love yourself, you can't love others and all that stuff. Now I know that's not true. Like I have a lot of love for other people and a lot of empathy for other people. And I try to give that same empathy to myself, but it's kind of difficult because I'm like, I'm myself. Like, what the heck? But I do try, yeah, the self-talk in my head, like being like, hey, it's okay, Damali, you're fine, like chill out, you're okay, like you're and I try to do that idea where you're fine where you are, regardless. Like it's like whether you love yourself or you don't, it's fine. You're okay, you're growing, it's okay. And I think that helps. So then I don't feel so bad about things like where it's like even if you make a mistake or you do something right, it doesn't mean the world is ending. And I think that's kind of helped me. I mean, I think I still block I still block stuff, but I try. I think I'm just more realistic about it now. Whereas before I was in some weird fantasy where like, oh, this is how you do so blah 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 kind of thing. And then you're like, oh, this is kind of different. And everyone just, and people just say stuff to make themselves feel better, which is fine. But yeah, so I'm still down that road. I think I have more like I have more understanding and ownership about stuff. And I can kind of look back on memories and be like, oh, that's why that happened, or oh, that wasn't my fault. Oh, that's why that okay. And then, of course, the neurodivergent thing, I'm like, okay, I'm different, and I know I'm different, and it explains why I'm like that. Oh, okay, and then I think now I have more like mechanisms to help myself or soothe myself or comfort myself if I do have an issue, whereas before I didn't. Now I kind of know like when I feel bad, I'm like, oh, okay, I know how to deal with this, and it kind of sucks, but I just kind of deal with it, and yeah. And then also to add, when COVID happened, that also put stuff on ahead because all of a sudden your life is my life has never been like it was in COVID. Like it's weird. Like what is this? Like I'm like I literally think the world is ending. What is this? Like this is a movie. What is going on? So COVID also made me think about stuff and be like, we really need to try to living in the moment and try and this whole thing about I have all these resolutions to do things like, no, just do what you can do, because anything could happen. The world is weird. Another thing I don't like, another thing is like, oh, well, people have it worse than you, or people are suffering more than you. And I'm like, I mean, yeah, but like, I'm not carrying their suffering and they're not carrying mine. So what is like, I'm still sad. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yes, it's worse for you, but I'm still sad. So what do I do with that? Like, does that make me like when you say that, like, oh, people are suffering more than you? Okay, does that mean all my problems magically disappear? No. So I don't understand. What does that do? I mean, I guess, yeah, it puts it in perspective and makes you think you're not like alone by yourself. And it's just like, but it's like, I don't think that really helps that much either because I'm like, yeah, I feel bad. I'll help people if I can, but and also there's that added thing where oh, if you help people, you'll feel better. If you give to charity or you do good things for people, I'm like, that's true, but I think that could be deflecting also because then it's like, oh, I'll only help people to make myself feel better, and it's like, that sounds a little bit, you know, but I mean, it's true though. Like when there is a type of feeling you get when someone is like suffering through something or going through a hard time, and you are able to help them, and it does make you focus less on yourself. It does because you're focusing on helping other person. But then you have to get back to yourself, and it's like, okay, do you soothe yourself like that when you're having a hard time? Like, what do you do when you're struggling, and why, And of course, it's hard because like I'm with myself all the time. Like, of course, it would be difficult to love myself because every good or bad thing or negative thing that goes in my mind, I haven't gone to the point where I can just let it go. It's like there. I can't block negative stuff and pause. It's on the same frequency in my mind. So still figuring that out. But yeah, I just kind of yeah, but I suppose I should revisit the self-love thing and try it again. But I'm kind of like, I'm just living my life and doing the best I can. That's kind of it. And like, and I know there's a lot of work to do because I know there are not as much as before, but there are some times where I'm like, oh, I wish I could like be someone else, or I had like a different skin, or I can just like I just want to get out of myself just for a bit. I'll come back, okay? Just for a bit, just go out of myself, be someone else, and then like it's fine. Or like, oh, if I can switch this, or oh my God, why can't I be this type of personality? Why can't I be like if I was like this, and there's been times, of course, in my life where I have tried to not completely change myself, like I don't like, but like I've tinkered with myself a bit and kind of like I've gone more out of my comfort zone, which is good sometimes, but other times like it's, I feel, especially when the first time when I got my first job, I was so kind of like, oh my God, I got my heels, got my makeup, I got all this 9 to 5, let's go. and I was trying to be like other people in the sense of like hang out where they hang out, do things that maybe I'm not 100% cool with, but I'm open and try new things. But of course, I noticed when I get back in, I was like, oh, but I try to do that and I still feel weird, or I still don't feel 100%, you know. And then sometimes I'm like, I wish I could walk paths with other people, because of course you have to walk your own path by yourself. But sometimes I'm like, oh, I wish I could have someone with me. Like I could have like someone on my shoulder that's with me all the time, because a lot of time you're by yourself, obviously, because you're doing things on your own. And so, yeah, so that not as much, but sometimes that does come up where I'm like, oh, why can't I just be more like this? Or why can't I just be this version of myself? Or, and then the opposite where I'm like, I've had the opposite where I'm going to hide myself, where I'm like, oh, if I hide myself, then it's better, or it's easier for other people, or it's easier for me. Or if I don't have any expectations, I won't be disappointed. There's that too. That happens. So yeah, I think it's still, obviously it's an uphill battle everyone goes through. But I'm more aware of it and I understand it more and I get where it's coming from. And I know there's still some dark sides of myself I refuse to poke at because I don't want to deal with it. Maybe next year or in 10 years we'll deal with it. Where there's things where, yeah, that's a dark part in my soul. I should probably deal with that. I'm like, I should probably take the trash out there in my mind. Now, just it's okay. We'll touch on that later, But yeah, so self-love is a really difficult thing. But yeah, that's part of my spiel, I guess, to start or to end. I don't know. Where were we?
Right. No,
what
it's
are we
good.
talking about?
No, it's good. It's good. And I see in terms of the familiarities or similarities in both of our journeys I love how we are both in different spaces in our journeys, but we're also both have learned how to be more accepting of ourselves and make be a proactive effort to be more present. And I think that's beautiful to illustrate that this journey is not about getting a grade or that there's only one way to go about it and all the other ways means you don't know what you're doing. Like actually it's the ups and downs or twists to it is normal. And that should be and that we should be holding grace and space for that with everyone. And the dynamic of when you're noting the darkness of like, I feel like some may mistake that the darkness shouldn't be there. Like the point of self-love is you completely eradicate darkness from you. And I would say no, in spite of how love and light my voice may sound or I may look like, I also carry a whole bunch of darkness and savagery within myself too. And the point of that though is that balances, we're supposed to be a balance of both. Like you can't have light without dark. You can't have the shadows without the light. They're supposed to both be there. And so I think maybe part of loving yourself really has to do with a lot more awareness of yourself. As in, which like noted earlier, of choosing to not be on autopilot, really choosing to recognize yourself, recognize all aspects of yourself and allow yourself to evolve through it and move through it as well.
Maybe that's the self-love. Just being the awareness is the biggest.
There you go. Exactly. Well, as opposed to it being an activity or an object, the self-love is actually, can you be your, which maybe this is going to segue into the next part of now we're trying to create a new definition, which then will go with this clip in this book that we're going to be mentioning to you listening, where it's the love part is more of taking ownership of yourself. Loving yourself is about really holding yourself or being the guardian of yourself and being more aware of yourself, as opposed to the concept of loving other people, which the original definitions focus too much on, where you're focused on your love languages and your love attachments and your love psychology. And all of that is still very much sometimes deflecting you away from you because you're focused so much on psychoanalyzing other people or performing for other people or trying to be validated or accepted by other people. And I think the awareness that when you get further along in this journey, and again, being further along in the journey does not mean there's no darkness. Being further along the journey does not mean, oh, no, you really like that you can claim you love yourself completely and there's no question about it. The questions will always be there because you're constantly discovering new layers to yourself, which I think is so fascinating that you like as the notion that as a kid, when you first get here, you really do know yourself. And then unfortunately we go outside and are conditioned to forget everything. And then you're adult, you choose to either just continue not knowing or spend all this effort rediscovering who you were from the beginning or who you were supposed to be from the beginning.
Let me also add before you go on.
Okay.
It makes me think of this like little quote I had about like who were you before the world got you? Like who were you before everyone's opinions and how they think about you and all those stuff? And it's like, oh, I forgot.
Exactly. Yes. It also reminds me there was this clip, which I think it was a real thing. I don't think it was an analogy, where a parent had noted that they were kind of eavesdropping on their kids. And they had a new baby and a slightly older child. And the slightly older child went into the room that the baby was in and thought that they were alone in the room with their new sibling. And they went to the sibling and said, okay, quick, tell me where did you come from and who you are so I can remind you when you start forgetting because I don't remember anymore. And the kid who was talking was about maybe like 4 years old or 3 years old or something, right? Now, granted, I don't know if the infant responded or back and forth or whatever, but the notion the parent was noting of like, no, there really is so much knowledge and wisdom that we're born with that we are living in a system that deliberately tries to erase it from us. And so when some people, when they're adults, take note of we're finding ourselves, discovering ourselves, and people mock that or joke about it or dismiss it of like, oh, you just don't have a job. That's what you're doing. And it's like, no. It has nothing to do with occupation. It's like there really is a part of you, layers of you of wisdom and knowledge and legacy that have been, I don't want to say erased like you can't find it again, but you have been conditioned to forget. Similar to the movie Men in Black, where he would flash that thing, that pen thing, so you don't remember that you visited an alien or you don't remember the Men in Black at all. It's a similar
called the neutralizer.
There. Okay. Thank you. Yes. Yes.
Neutralizer.
Thank you. So it's funny that for both of us, we see that school was the neutralizer. It caused us to forget who we are supposed to be. But to broaden that, we would say just the system in general, society in general is set up to make you forget. And then those who choose to try and relearn it or discover it are seen as a threat. I feel like that's not random, but take it as you like it. I'm not here to force you how to think, but that's something to take note of. So in this journey and trying to create a new definition, let's continue on this thread about maybe loving yourself actually has more to do with developing your self-awareness. So you are more accepting of yourself and you are no longer deflecting. Because I noted that was also a big thing you were noting of that I also noted of it is more convenient to deflect from yourself. Even the self-deprecating self-talk is deflection. Let me tell you what I don't like about myself so you can just focus on that. So I don't have to even be held responsible for what I could actually deliver or who I'm supposed to be. Or let me deflect and focus on, like you noted, let me focus on how everyone has it worse than me. So I should be grateful that I'm not in their hole. That doesn't really help anybody, but it's also, again, a deflection of awareness for you. Or like I noted in my story of like even understanding what are your own needs. Where do you want to be? Who do you need to be for yourself? Not for everybody else. And this is where sometimes people may cast this as this is being selfish. if you're not thinking of everybody else, you're only thinking about yourself. And so I have to reiterate that the accepting or awareness of yourself is the source of how you can be accepting of everybody else in a loving way. How you can actually see everybody through their heart, as opposed to either the BS or the cool stuff that they are reflecting back to you. You can't do that if you don't know yourself or not aware of yourself or have not made the effort to check yourself and understand yourself. So, going into this concept of let's create a new definition for what it means to love ourselves. And we wanted to add in another perspective, not
Pause.
claiming, okay, yes.
Not to interrupt you, but just to piggyback off before I forget.
All right.
Yeah, I think what you said was the selfish thing, because like resentment can build too, right? Because if you don't take care of yourself, or you're always not, and you always, because we hear that a lot, if you have to take care of other people, sometimes resentment leaks in. It's a burden. Well, I didn't get to deal with myself, or like hatred and resentment can build if you don't take care of yourself, but you're doing something for somebody else. So that's why I'm like, so when they throw the selfish thing in, I'm like, okay, then maybe and then also selfishness, is it wrong though? Is it always wrong to be selfish? Because if you can take care of yourself and take care of other people, then I don't understand what's selfish about it. Selfish that I think is like, I don't do anything for anybody else. I don't care about anybody else. And I feel like most people are not like that. Like people tend to do stuff for other people and kind of thing. So yeah, I think resentment is one thing that can build, that we've heard, where it's like, but you took care of me this whole time. Yeah, but I never loved you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, this whole time, like, well, I didn't know. Well, you didn't know that I was bleeding, and I was like on the floor in a pool of blood, and you didn't see it. So, and I'm like, but like as if like you choose to take care of someone, but then you turn around and you get mad at them because you took care of them, because like, well, it's because of you that I couldn't have my own life. And I'm like, okay, but like, okay, like, it's always like, so that's why honestly, it's important to take care of yourself, to take care of others. Because like, if you can't, then how are you, like, if you're starving on the floor, but you're giving people food, but you can't even walk, like, what's happening here, So I just thought to add that point. But yes, to go on to the next point that we,
and that is a good point, because I definitely resonate with that. Mm-hmm. And I think that was maybe part of my catalyst or inspiration to shift away from focusing on everybody else so much. Because I think I also it maybe was resentment or just a form of bitterness, of feeling like, but I give so much, I do so much, at sometimes the detriment of me, at sometimes putting myself second in order for other people to get whatever they need or want, and feeling the energy not being reciprocated. And it's not that the thing itself has to be reciprocated, but even like the level of care not being reciprocated. Yes, that definitely can lead to bitterness, which then you got to check yourself of like, but they didn't ask you to sacrifice so much. They're just taking advantage of it because you're already giving it. Right? So then so sometimes when the bitterness and resentment comes in, it's like, oh, your feelings are definitely valid. They definitely are taking advantage, taken for granted. It's definitely one-sided. But again, do you want to be on autopilot, or you want to take the wheel? If you want to be on autopilot, then it's true that yes, a lot of people just be looping in resentment and victimhood, basically. When you take the wheel and take note of like, actually, nobody asked for all of that, technically. If you take it back, the world won't end. And then now you can reteach everybody of like, yes, those of us who are the generous ones, the generosity will always still be there. But now there's standards. Now there's boundaries. Now there's more of a process. Now there's more of actually it could be revoked at any time because the priorities have changed. And that's important. And I think I got to reiterate, like, it's okay to be selfish then. If the claim is, well, now you're being selfish because you're not being a doormat for other people, or now you're being selfish because you don't focus on other people as much anymore and you actually hold yourself as a priority, then I would encourage more of us to be selfish then, because we are not helping anyone really when we deprive ourselves of the care that we should be giving ourselves. And so this then, talking about the care we need to give ourselves, goes into what this new definition could look like. Now note, this new definition is still evolving. I feel like as we continue on this journey, we will probably add more to it or transform it and mold it. But in this moment in time, a perspective that we both resonated with to add to this new definition comes from a particular gentleman named Matthew Hussey. Did I say it right? Hussey or Hussey? Okay, Hussey. All right. So I'm not sure, you listening, if you have come across his content, because he's been outside on these internet streets talking about relationships for a very long time. Now, this perspective came in because actually Damali is the one who brought it up for this episode. I myself personally, I remember seeing his content like almost 10 or something years ago. And back then, he was the guy who was like, send these 5 text messages if you want him to be obsessed with you. Do these 3 things to find out if he is a red flag or a green flag. Like, he was very much into, I'm going to tell you how to do the dating game. Okay. So I was pleasantly surprised. Not to say that content is good or bad, but that's not necessarily my cup of Ribena coconut water. Okay. So recently, he came out with a book, which Damali purchased. And she sent me this clip that he did an interview with Drew Barrymore. And I think it's due to the book touring that he's press PR vibes that he's in right now for this book. And in that short clip, which we will put the clip in the show notes and the blog post if you want to see this or see the interview. And he's noting about this concept of self-love and how both him and Drew Barrymore apparently don't even like the term. And both of us, Damali and I, we both resonated with how he described loving yourself to be more about a guardian and child, a parent and child relationship. As in, loving yourself is that you are the guardian of yourself. And so when you have a wholesome guardian, because there's a variety of guardians on this planet, but when you have a wholesome, evolved guardian, when you ask that guardian, why do you love your kid? They will not claim it's because they made good grades. They would not list it's because they cleaned their room. They would not say, oh, well, it's because, they helped me out with this and that, or it's because they look a certain way, or it's because I can show them off to my friends. The response is, it's because they're mine. I love the child because that child is mine. So when you take that analogy to you are the guardian of you, and you ask yourself, why do you love yourself? Is it possible that we could get to a point where we can answer that question saying, because it's me. I love being myself because I'm me, or I got me, or I have me. And I think that is a great starting point or an added layer to this new definition to loving ourselves. That removes the focus being performative, the focus being other people, the focus being fixing ourselves. Is like the foundation is just, I exist as me. And that is more than enough for me to love myself. And so I don't need to prove anything to myself. Everything else is extra. Every achievement, accomplishment, and experience is extra. I already start at love. I'm not starting at 0. I started at love. So everything else above that is like a beautiful bonus that I actually deserve already because I started at love. And I really love that. I like that. And I feel like that helps to then allow the loving of yourself to not be compartmentalized on I love myself on my good days, and on my bad days I completely beat myself up and kill myself and all this kind of stuff. Like, it's not, because unfortunately the loving yourself is when I did something good, I love myself. And then when I apparently don't do something quote unquote good or do a mistake, now it's time to beat up and browbeat myself and go back to zero. And so noting that maybe the deal of feeling like you're at zero is more of a self-sabotaging or self-deprecating illusion, because none of us started at zero. We all of us start at love. But then that connects to what we noted, that if all the wisdom and knowledge and legacy that you were born with has been conditionally erased or wiped from your mind to make you believe you're starting at zero, to forget that you've always started at love, that's done deliberately so you can be controlled. Because if you think you start at zero, you will always be looking to everybody else to tell you, how can you get up to love? And they will control you through that because you're on autopilot. Yes? But if you remove yourself from being autopilot and recognize you already started at love, it makes it very difficult for others to control you and how you choose to show up for yourself and for them.
Yeah, I thought that was a good, that was a good thing to say. That, yeah, it's always like it's conditional. Like, if I do something good, then I love myself. If not, then, but you don't do that with, like, if you're in a relationship with people or your family, you're not like, oh, when they get a good grade, I'll love them. When they get a bad grade, I won't. We don't do that with other people that we care about, but for some reason we do it for ourselves. Like, we have to do something, and to add about the Matthew Hussey thing, I guess I should add more about it because I've known about him for a while and I follow him. Yeah, I also was the type, when I first heard about him, I was like, what is this? Like, 3 ways to get a guy. And I was like, this is so stupid. Stop, But then there was one episode, funnily enough, speaking of self-love, there's one episode of his that I saw where I think he was talking about he was embarrassed about something, or I don't know what it was, something about something that made him uncomfortable, embarrassed. And it was so kind of like open. And I was like, wait a minute. I didn't know if it's what the heck is this about, Matthew Hussey? What the heck is this about? And I started following him, and I learned more about him, and find that it's not only about getting a relationship, it's also the relationship with yourself, and how, like, focusing on what your needs and then connecting that to getting into a relationship, and like, and it went beyond just getting the guy. And I suppose he's also shifted, because he's been doing this for like almost like 20 years, like 15 years maybe. So he's been here for a minute. So I'm sure he's like crafted it more. And at first started out with talking to guys about their love, then it became with women. And women have talked about their experiences and following him and doing retreats, and it really has helped them be better and get more, like, it's not just about just getting the guy, it's about how you feel about yourself. And then also I saw another interview where he talked about some chronic issue or illness he has and the way he deals with it, which also made me think, okay, this guy's there's a lot deeper stuff going on. And then he has this in his book. I haven't finished it yet, but in his book, he also starts off talking about how I didn't start off being like the perfect guy. Like, people think that, like, oh, because I'm a great guy, I'm awesome, that's why and he's like, no, through his mistakes is how he figured out this kind of rubric to go by. Because he talked about how he was more of like a people pleaser when he was younger. Like, he went through that phase of people pleasing and just giving people kind of what they want, kind of thing, and like being like a nice guy, but not being as in depth as he could be. And even like giving advice. I think to add one part where he talked about, like, one time he was giving advice about getting over a heartbreak or something, and there was some older gentleman that was off to the side watching him do this video, and the older gentleman came up to him and he's like, "You've never been through heartbreak, have you?" And Matthew Hussey was like, "What?" And in his head, he's like, "Who the hell do you think you are? Like, some stranger come and talk to me? I've done the research," like all this stuff. And I'm like, wow. So he went through kind of like talking about heartbreak in like the logical sense of this, how you get through a heartbreak, but that's not, and then I was like, oh, wow. So he's talking about something he hadn't experienced in that way. And just him revealing that kind of, I thought, was very like open and like very vulnerable kind of thing, in a way that I kind of don't really you don't really expect from, like, because Love Guru is just about, oh, get the guy, but there's more to it. And so I did more research on him, and like I follow him and stuff, and I'm like, oh, you know what? He makes a lot of sense. That works. And then in this clip of Drew Barrymore, Matthew Hussey talks about the self-love thing. And honestly, I cried a bit with what he said because it completely shifted my thought about self-love. And I'm just like, oh my God, so I'm not a weirdo. It's okay that it's hard to figure this out. And yeah, and he was talking about how, yeah, like we should love ourselves more like a parent and a child, which is like the example you gave, where you don't love your child because of what they do. You love them because of your child. So why do we do that with ourselves, where I have to do something to introduce the self-love, right? And for him, I know Dagny said she took a slightly different approach about what he said, but in the video, he talked about how he thought like loving yourself should be more like it's a response, it's a job, like it's like you should take accountability for loving yourself. Like, and I think he brought an example of like, in the very beginning of your life, you're given a human, the human being yourself, and you're given this human, and you're supposed to take care of it and grow, like almost like it's a plant. You're given this human to take care of and nurture and do all these things. And that's what we need to do with ourselves. We shouldn't just throw ourselves anywhere. But like we need to be like, this is a very precious human. And and think about, as an example, if you had to take like, if you have to take care of, let's say you have like some small little human in your hand or fairy, and you have to take care of it, what would you do to take care of it? Right? You would probably do, what if this fairy was very like fragile, or it could break very easily? You probably would take really good care of it, right? Or even when you have like a child, right? You don't just like, when you have a baby that's like 2 months old, you don't just throw the baby anywhere, right? Like you don't just be like, whatever, I don't care. Like, no, I mean, some abusive people, but people that are like okay and normal, you don't throw babies around, right? And like, and you have to carry the baby a certain way. You like literally you have to be on your toes with what the baby is doing at all times, because the baby, anything could happen. And I'm like, why don't we do that with ourselves? Like, I don't know why we become adults and all of a sudden we're like, well, someone else has to do it, or I can't do, or we're so kind of like cruel and mean to ourselves in a way that you would never do it to other people because you care about them. I'm like, well, you should care about yourself, right? And so I thought I like what he said, because I'm like, oh, and he's like, it's normal because, and then of course he talked about being attracted. It's easy to be attracted to other people because there's mystery to them. Like if you're talking about relationships, you see someone, they're really dark, tall, dark and handsome, or they do something really cool, and you're like, oh my God, who is this? And then he explains how, why is it that you fall in love with someone, and then after 10 or 20 years, you can't stand them? Why does that happen? The more you get to know them, you're like, I don't want to have anything to do with this horrible person. And that's like us. Like we're literally always with ourselves. Like there's no mystery to who I am. Like, like I'm with myself all the time. Where's the mystery? Like, are things that you have like, what am I? Who am I? What could I be thinking? I'm with myself 24/7. I never get a break. So it's the familiar, like what did he say? I think familiarity breeds contempt. I think that's what he said. I think that's what he said, where sometimes being too familiar can make you not like something anymore. And he said that like you can love yourself even if you don't like yourself. And the part that I think made me cry a bit was when he's like, the days that you're at your worst, that's when you need to love yourself the most. Like we think, oh, I have to do something good. No, when you're on the floor and just like a mess, that's when you're like, hey, you're okay, Damali, you're okay. Like, let's get up and figure this out. And I was like, that's so true. Like, why, like when you're on the floor, like, because all you're focusing on is being on the floor, but like that's when you need a helping hand more than anything, right? That's when you need someone there to help you, right? Like, and I was just like, oh, I don't know why. It's such a simple thing to think about, but like I never thought about it that way, where it's like, yeah, why is it like when we're going through a bad time, we beat ourselves up more as if we need that? Like, you made a mistake. Oh my God, how dare you make a mistake, Damali? You're a horrible person. How could you do that? It's like, wait, what? No, that's not, I already made the mistake. Why am I making it worse? The thing to do is say, okay, you made a mistake. It's okay. What can we do to figure this out? How can we make this better? How can we make sure we don't do this again? And like, it's okay. You're loved. You're taken care of. It's fine. We'll fix it. And I think that that's important, because we always like beat ourselves up and stuff like that. And I'm like, why do you beat, like, what does that do? Like, I don't understand how does beating yourself up for something you did wrong do anything? What does that do? Like, what are you fixing? Right? But because it's easy, there's no one to police it. There's no one to do anything because it's all in your head. It's you yourself, right? So yeah, so I really thought that was an interesting take, and it wasn't like it wasn't a very long interview, but I was like, oh, I never thought about, and that's why he said he hates that term self-love, because like, what does that mean? Like, it makes it seem as if it's some kind of like weird, like, what is that, so yeah, so and I think, and I think one of the comments at the bottom was saying, if it's a project, then it's something you can learn again. It's something that, like, it's a goal that you can reach if it's a project. Like, oh, okay, if I take these things, if I do this stuff and these steps, I could love myself, and I don't have to feel bad that I'm not perfect yet. Like, I'm not at, like, it's normal because I'm with myself all the time. So I have to be privy to all my mistakes, my negativity, my positivity, the things I like about myself, the things I don't. I have to be aware of all of those things that, and you're not like, imagine if like the way you're with yourself all the time. Think about anyone you love or care about, right? If you're with that person all the time, like no breathing room, you have to go to the bathroom with them, you have to sleep, like how would you feel? How does that change how you are with the person versus seeing them once in a while, or sometimes, or even if you see them every day? You probably would have a different reaction to them. Like, I mean, everyone's been annoyed by someone before, right? Or the thing about being, or people being clingy or things like that, or if you don't have boundaries set, and how irritated do you get when people don't listen to your boundaries, like they overstep? It bothers you, right? So imagine being with yourself and your boundaries are always being like set all the time, because I can't get away from myself. Like, Damali's always here. Even when I'm sleeping, I wake up, oh, I'm still with her. Damn it. Like, I need a break, just kidding. Um, but yeah, so I think that's kind of when I watched it, I was like, oh, Dagny, we're gonna talk about self-love because we need to figure out what this is. And then I guess that comes to what our definition of it could be.
Mhm.
I mean, I guess I'll start with, I think, for when the parent and child relationship, I'm like, oh, okay, haven't thought of that, parent and child, right? And then I know, Dagny, yours is like the guardian thing, or I guess I could also say, like, if you're taking care of like a plant, like raising a plant, I guess could be, or even taking care of an animal, I guess. Like, how are you with like, if you're really, like, think about how much care we put into taking care of dogs. Like, so much care, so much money. I'm like, okay, that could also be another example of how to do the self-love thing, and realizing it's like a journey. It's not like like it's okay, and it's okay if you fall sometimes, like, or, and then also I think not loving yourself all the time is fine too, because as much as you like love the people in your life, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you're like there's little moments where you're like, I don't know, and maybe not the love thing, it's like a like thing, like people that you care about, if they do something to piss you off or make you angry or something, you're just like, ah, and you're like, oh wait, hold on, I do love you. You're just annoying, like, like things like that. And but we're never like, well, like we don't feel like, if I don't know, like if I feel angry at someone, I don't feel bad. Like, I don't question that I love them. I don't question it. It's just like, okay, well, I'm just angry at you right now, but tomorrow we'll be laughing and it's fine. You know what I mean? But for myself, the moment I'm like, oh, I don't love myself. What do I do? What do I do? Kind of thing. Like, oh my God, I'm being, and it's like, So anyway, sorry. One definition is treat self-love as a parent and child. You being the parent and the child. What about you, Dagny?
Okay, I think I would. Yes, I like the guardian, or like you are the guardian of your own galaxy.
Yes.
I see it as that, because you're constantly discovering new things about yourself, like a galaxy. Like, you are your own galaxy. I think also the understanding the difference between, okay, I'll say it in a quote that I think I saw, where it notes, when you like something, you will make an effort when it's convenient. When you are committed or devoted to something, you will do whatever it takes. Another analogy, when you like a flower, you pluck it, put it in a vase, and allow it to die on your table, because technically it's dying while it's in the vase. When you love a flower, you will nurture its garden. You will allow it to stay in the garden and allow the garden to continue flourishing with it around it. So I think loving yourself needs a real level, a deeper level of devotion and commitment to yourself, so that regardless of annoyances or hiccups or challenges or winning and good luck and anything else in between, you are consistently being whoever you need to be in those moments. And I think for me, the goal is not necessarily being or striving to be the best version of me. I'm more thriving in being the favorite version of me. So there's more acceptance of, it's not trying to be perfect. It's not trying to compete. It's more of, no, this accepting, this is who I need to be in this moment in time. And can I take full responsibility for who I'm choosing to be in this moment in time? And is it embodying everything I've already learned, everything I'm trying to experiment with? Am I showing up in a way that I'm truly proud of, or that I truly enjoy or love? I think I would add that to the new definition as well.
I like that. I like the garden analogy. Like, how do you take care of your, because that's true. We always have a thing where, how do you take care of your plant? How do you take care of your God? How do you take care of, it's always like taking care of everybody else. And I'm like, you could put that on yourself and be like, okay. And also, I think there are different like levels to it. Like, some days you won't feel too hot. Okay. And then tomorrow we try again, kind of thing. And I like the idea of like, if you're a priority or you're fully devoted to something, you put your all into it. So you need to like up your devotion to yourself and up making yourself a priority where it becomes a habit. I think habit is good too, because if you're in the habit of doing stuff, you tend to do them more. So if you make a habit of taking care of yourself, or a habit of doing certain things, then you'll get more results and feel better about yourself. And make it where it's about you, not so much people say. Because I notice that even when I do nice things, or people tell me things about, like, if they tell me, oh, thank you so much for this, Jamal, or you're so great, you're so this, I have a hard time believing it for some reason. Like, other people say I'm great at something or whatever, I'm just like, oh, maybe. I mean, there's always a thought of like, well, you say that, but if you knew everything I knew about myself, then you wouldn't say. Like, there's always like that kind of self-talk where like, you don't really know me, do you? Even people that care about me, I'm like, I don't know, or like, or you just say that because you're supposed to, kind of thing. And I think it's something about that that mama, our mom says too, where she's like, oh, you guys are so great and so, but like, I know that when I say it, you don't believe it because I'm your mom, even though it's the truth, but you don't believe it. And I'm like, yeah, because like my mom saying like, oh, I love you. I'm like, yeah, well, of course you love me. You're my mom. You're supposed to, which is not necessarily true, because some moms, are not always the nicest. But yeah, yeah. So it's like you always need. So, and even when I do nice things, I just think of them as, well, of course I'll do nice things, but that doesn't mean I'm perfect. That doesn't mean that I like myself. Like, why wouldn't you do a nice thing? And yeah, so I have trouble like sometimes like believing people until I myself, I'm like, oh, I guess that was a nice thing to do, or oh, that's um and also I've noticed too, like when the whole giving too much has happened with me too, and I end up feeling drained or taking advantage of, that's happened too. And when you're extending yourself too much out of your emotional stuff. So yeah, so for me, yeah, and I think for me it's like taking note of good things. Like, if something bad happens and I say nice things to myself, I'm like, oh, okay, all right, let's try doing that more, kind of thing. Or like something that happened when I was younger, and then now I have a different perspective of it. Because like your memory changes, like you think the way something, like things that happen change depending on how your memory, you know, gets into it. And just and then also being aware that when people act a certain way towards you, it has more to do with them than it does with you. I think that's a big thing too. Um, and if I'm self-conscious about something, sometimes like you notice stuff but other people don't, and that happens too, where there's something that I wasn't self-conscious about, and then all of a sudden I get older and I'm like, I'm really self-conscious about that, and I'm like, wait, what? I'm older, why do I care? But I think, yeah, and it's hard because I was much freer as a child. I could, like my mom always says, I could fly when I was a child because I would just do like everything, whereas as an adult, I'm like, well, I don't know. Can I actually fly? Like, are you really being real right now? So yeah, yeah, it's so funny because like I'm more prone, like if someone says a negative thing about me, I'm more likely to believe that. Like I'll be like, oh yeah, I know, I suck, right? Like, but if someone says something nice, I'm like, nah, that doesn't really, which is so weird. Like I don't know why we're humans, we just tend to always veer toward the negative side or the dark side for some reason. And we don't, which I guess is part of society too, where they want you so they can feed on that. They make money off of your sadness, right? Obviously, like with all the stuff they sell you to make you feel better, they make money off of it, right? But yeah, like if I have to get better at that, where like when people like I should believe them. And then also I heard this other thing, some other book I read, I forgot what it was called. I think it was called oh, I don't know. It's some inspirational book I read. I forgot what it was. Untethered Soul, I think it was called. Untethered by Michael something. And he said something about like how you, oh my gosh, I think I forgot the thought I was going to make. Let me see if it comes back. Oh, right. He said something about you don't have to believe everything your mind says. I think he said something about where it's like, if you like, you don't have to, like, everything you think about is not always true. Like the way you feel about yourself is not always, and your mind is just your mind. It just gives you thoughts, and it just, sometimes it's not, and then when you're at the middle of the night, just thinking of all these things you have to do. And it's like, maybe and also I think for me, I try to be more objective with the way I view stuff, like the way I see myself. Because if you do objective and fact, that is something tangible and something that's easier to work with than I don't really know how I feel about, kind of thing. So that kind of helps a bit. But yeah, I'm definitely a bit more aware of myself and how I do things. I don't think I guess I'll say that, I mean, I know I said I don't know if I love myself or not, but I guess I dislike myself a little like less than before, I guess. So that's a bit, I guess that's a bit better, kind of thing. And yeah, so I think we should, the definition of it does have to change a bit. Like it should be more about like, how would you take care of a flower? How would you take care of a dog? How do you take care of a child? How do you even take care of something precious to you, like a necklace or where it's like it means a lot to you, and how much work do you put into taking care of stuff, and then use that and try it, and that way of outside of yourself, and then try putting it on yourself. Like, how better could I take care of myself in a real way, not a surface level? Oh, I'll just buy myself flowers. Oh, I'll just buy myself this. And it's like, no, you shouldn't have to buy anything. It should just be like, you know, what do I do to take care in a real way? What can I say or think about myself that makes me feel good, right? And also like why can't I just say nice things to myself randomly, like at any time of the day, be like, you're awesome, you're great, because like just look in the mirror and be like, hey, you're kind of awesome, and like, and that's strange for people. Like you can tell another person how much you love them, but for yourself you can't. Like, no, you should be waxing poetic all over yourself, okay? In the mirror, like, you're amazing, and just as you are, like, because of and something on you, like that's something that I'm like I feel about myself. It shouldn't be something out like, oh, I did, like the achievement is why I love myself. No, it's because of something you like about how you look, or oh, because I have a good heart, or because I, you know, or even it could be something that I did something wrong this time, but like the way I reacted to my mistakes, I did a better job of it, or I was kinder to myself when I did this, or stuff like that. And yeah, but it's an uphill battle, and after watching that video, I'm like, oh, okay, I don't feel too bad about not perfectly loving myself or knowing what the heck that means. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I see, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So then, to bring it all.
Don't say to wrap up. No,
oh, I was about to say to bring it all in, bring it all together, right? I'm trying to switch up the wrapping up phrase. I wanted to share some tips for you listening, I think, if regardless of what part of this journey you're in, when it comes to loving yourself. As always, we're glad to hear from you, to take note of what part of the journey you're on. Does this resonate with you? What would you add to this new definition? Do you resonate with the idea that we need a new definition with loving ourselves? And because it's about love, I wanted to bring up the concepts of love languages and attachment styles. There has now been a lot more content and talk and perceptions about these things that are in the self-awareness, self-help industry. And I'm not going to say whether or not you should read those things or take those quizzes or know what label you are. I would like to submit, though. It's just a suggestion, okay? Take what resonates with you. I'm not forcing you, okay? That I feel like when it comes to self-awareness, it's more helpful, at least for me, to accept that I am fluid. I don't fit in a box, which means when I try to fit a label onto my experience or what I'm trying to achieve, it may be restricting or depriving me of the experience or the abundance that I deserve. So when we're talking about love languages and attachment styles, if those things resonate with you or you find them helpful to take the quiz and be like, well, actually my number 1 is words of affirmation and my number 2 is gifts and my number 3 is this. And my attachment style is a mixture of this, that, the other. I'm saying that as an example. I'm not giving you what mine have been or are. I would submit to take those things as they could be a starting point in terms of trying to go deeper in understanding yourself, but don't use them as this is my label and that's it. And also try your best not to use it to psychoanalyze other people. I've noted a lot of the rhetoric when it comes to love languages and attachment styles, which come in to your how do you love yourself, is a lot of it is based on, oh, I see right now you didn't respond to my text, so you must be an avoidant word of affirmation person because, and this is why you're doing this. Like, this is not, I don't think that is how you're supposed to use the tool. I feel, again, it's being utilized as a very convenient way to deflect from yourself if you're using the tools to psychoanalyze or judge or compartmentalize other people. Instead, if you find those tools useful, I think it's better to learn all of them. Because with the fluidity, I feel like some parts of your journey, you may resonate with one of them, and then later you may resonate with 2 of them, and then later you might resonate with only the 3rd one. Like, it's fluid. And I feel like that's for all of us. There are variety, similar to how the word love, what is it? It is in Latin or some other language where it's actually not one word, it's like 5 other words or 12 other words and stuff. Like, your languages or your attachments will also evolve and change and transform like you. Similar to you are not the same person you were a year ago, regardless if you're on autopilot or not. Your attachment styles and languages in the way you express your love and in the way you take care of yourself will also evolve and transform. So I do want to submit, be very careful about the types of labels and rhetorics that are coming up, because there's a lot of so-called free therapy happening online, including in this medium we're speaking to you on in podcasts. And we have to be very discerning about the types of information we're given, to not self-diagnose ourselves with stuff that doesn't even exist, or to not restrict ourselves into a box. And I gotta bring it up. A lot of these labels are written by who? They are written, defined by a certain demographic. There's only certain psychiatrists that get published and pushed, and everybody picks it up. I know you already know who I'm talking about, so I don't need to, say it out loud. But that same demographic is the same one who's defined a whole bunch of other things that have been very destructive. So I just feel, again, a lot of these labels and rhetoric, you got to take it with half a grain of salt sometimes, because it's possible that it's actually it's another tool trying to control you, to deflect from yourself. So just be cognizant, aware of it. Take what resonates with you. I'm not saying throw it away, but just be careful with that. My next final tip. I would like to ask you a question for you listening to reflect on for yourself. If I asked you, what do you love about yourself? Would you be able to answer that question? And would there be a list? Or would it be one word? Or would it be a phrase? Could you list what do you love about yourself? And when you look at that list, how much of it is about what you do for other people? And how much of it is about who you are? And is there a balance that needs to be done on that list? That's to start on your wonderful journey. I know you're already on, but those are the two things I would like to leave with you to take on and continue workshopping and reflecting when it comes to how are we continuing to do better and be better when it comes to taking care and loving ourselves and everything and everyone in this galaxy.
Okay, yeah. So good luck on y'all's from Texas, y'all's journey with self-love. And it's okay for it to have ups and downs. And also you can define your own self-love, but just make sure it's like real self-love. It's like real. It's not on the surface. And when it's on the deep down, when it's on the surface, and yeah, and the self-love thing, you shouldn't have to buy anything, kind of like with family. I don't have to, like my family, like I feel like with family like people don't have to buy you stuff for you to love them, right? Like it's about who they are, not so much what they buy you. So if you're like, I'm not saying you shouldn't buy yourself flowers, like of course, but just make sure you're doing the other work too. Um, and I like what you said too about the labels. Like, be careful with the label. I mean, same with other labels that we've talked about, like, the love languages, the feminist, like all these labels that like put us in boxes and make, oh, well, you're that way because like, no. Like, oh, and also narcissist comes out a lot. And yeah, you get to choose your inner world or your inner like reality. And I don't think labels are enough to encapsulate, I think, words, encapsulate who you are. We're too complex to just be one label kind of thing. And and I think we do have work to do. And and it'll be curious to hear you guys' thoughts on that. How do you love yourself? Do you really love yourself? Have you forgotten how? You have to relearn what it means again, Yeah. I'm right. Yeah.
All right. So thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you very
And
much.
we hope you listening enjoyed it. And again, we love hearing from you. So we're looking forward to hearing from you. If you do listen to this podcast on Spotify, they now have comments. So we are looking forward to reading and engaging with you if you listen to us on that platform. Of course, you're free to listen to us on all other platforms. This is streaming. And if no one told you this today, I am very proud of you and the way you show up for yourself. So keep doing you and keep shining, okay? Take care, and we'll see you, hear from you, and speak to you on the next episode.
Okay. Good luck on the journey for loving yourself. Bye.
Bye.